Chapter 1: The Gate of Abandonment. The terminal lights hummed faintly overhead, casting a pale reflection across the glass windows of Fayetteville Regional Airport. Clara Anderson sat quietly at Gate 7A, her small leather bag clutched between trembling hands. She could still feel the warmth of her son's palm, Harry's, when he handed her the boarding pass an hour ago. He'd smiled that same half-hearted smile he wore at her husband's funeral 3 years earlier. "Mom, you'll be fine," he'd said. "We'll call once you land." But now, as the minutes bled into an hour, her phone buzzed furiously, 18 missed calls, all from Harry and Lisa. No voicemail. No message. Just silence layered with guilt. It wasn't the calls that unsettled Clara. It was the timing. The way they celebrated when she signed the deed that morning. The laughter. The champagne. The false warmth. Harry had said, "Mom, this is for your peace of mind. You'll never have to worry about taxes again." She remembered Lisa's words echoing over the clinking glasses, "You deserve rest, Clara. You've done enough." They'd driven her straight to the airport after the signing, smiling, affectionate, attentive, until the car door shut behind her. That was when she saw it. Harry's eyes, avoiding hers. Lisa's hand tightening around his. The coldness beneath their goodbye. Now, at the gate, Clara understood the unspoken betrayal. She wasn't being sent to visit anyone. She was being erased. Her mind flashed back to Eric, her husband, her anchor, who had died of cancer 3 years earlier. He used to say, "Don't ever underestimate your instincts, Clara. They kept you alive in Da Nang. They'll keep you alive anywhere." And those instincts screamed now. Something was wrong. She slowly reached into her purse, pulling out the envelope from the law office. Her name wasn't on the property deed anymore. It read, "Property owner, Harry and Lisa Anderson." Her chest tightened. Her signature, copied, precise, but it wasn't hers. Clara had survived ambushes in Vietnam, bullets cutting through rain, the smell of burning rice fields. But this betrayal by her own blood, was a wound no medic could stitch. She inhaled deeply, grounding herself. The Marines had trained her to observe before acting, to strike only when the time was right. And so, she sat there in silence, staring at the tarmac as planes taxied past. She could feel the storm building within her, controlled, deliberate. This wasn't defeat. It was reconnaissance. The announcements over the intercom blurred into white noise as she pieced together every detail. The rush to have her sign, the notarized stamp that looked slightly off, the way Harry took control of her bank accounts for convenience. They thought she was too frail to notice. Too old. Too medicated. They'd made the mistake of forgetting who she truly was, Sergeant Clara Anderson, 3-time Purple Heart recipient, Bronze Star honoree, 25-year Lockheed Martin engineer. She had spent her life building planes that carried soldiers safely home. Now, her mission was to bring herself home, from betrayal. As she waited for her flight, one she never intended to board, she texted a single number. "Jimmy, it's Clara. We need to talk." Jimmy Miller, retired colonel, VFW post-1952 commander, and one of Eric's oldest friends. If there was anyone she could trust, it was him. The text sent. The plan had begun. She turned her phone to airplane mode, a wry smile touching her lips. "Let them panic," she whispered. "Let them wonder." The gate agent called her name once, then twice, before marking her as a no-show. Outside, the evening rain began to fall, gentle, rhythmic, cleansing. Clara rose slowly, her back straight, her medals glinting faintly beneath her jacket. There would be no flight today. Only war. And this time, the battlefield wasn't in Vietnam, it was in Fayetteville. Her son had stolen her trust, her home, and her dignity. But he had forgotten one thing: a Marine never surrenders. As she stepped into the rain, her heart hardened with purpose. The world would soon learn what happens when you push a soldier too far. Clara Anderson was done being a victim. She was about to become the reckoning. Imagine being 74, betrayed by your own children after signing away everything you built, left stranded at an airport, clutching a forged deed. But what if that same woman was a decorated Marine who once crawled through rice paddies under enemy fire? What if she turned that betrayal into the most public revenge North Carolina had ever seen? Stay with us, because this story is only beginning. If this story pulled at your heart, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and tell us where you're streaming from. You don't want to miss what happens next, because Clara's revenge has just taken flight. Chapter TWO: Shadows in the Kitchen. Rain drummed softly against the kitchen window as Clara stood at the counter, staring at the blue pill organizer Eric had once labeled for her. Tuesday. Sertraline 100 mg. Prazosin 2 mg. Her PTSD meds, as Harry mockingly called them. It had been 3 weeks since the airport. 3 weeks of silence. She hadn't answered a single one of their calls. They thought she was gone, out of the way, harmless. But Clara was back in her home, quietly watching the house she once trusted them to protect. She'd driven her old Honda Civic through the night, stopping miles outside Fayetteville, staying with a friend from her Lockheed Martin days. Jimmy Miller had called in a favor, arranging for a locksmith and a private investigator. By dawn, Clara's locks had been changed. Her house, her life, was hers again, even if only for now. The kitchen smelled faintly of lemon polish and betrayal. She could still hear Lisa's voice echoing through the walls. "It's for her own good, Harry. The old lady's losing it." They had filmed her, mocked her, gaslit her into silence. But now, the silence was hers, a weapon. On the table lay a notebook, her new war journal. Each page was a mission plan, bank statements, lawyer's notes, and screenshots of every unauthorized charge. The BMW lease. The Nordstrom splurges. The Myrtle Beach trip. She'd even written down their conversations, word for word. Every insult, every condescending "Mom, you forgot again," every staged moment meant to make her look incompetent. At the top of the page, in bold letters, she wrote, "Operation Payback." Jimmy had come by that morning, his veteran's cap pulled low, a folder in his hands. "They forged your signature, Clara," he said flatly. "Sloppy job, but enough to fool a notary who didn't look twice." Clara's jaw tightened. "They used Office Max paper," she muttered. "Eric would have known better." Jimmy chuckled grimly. "They underestimated a Marine." She smiled faintly. "Everyone does, until they regret it." That night, Clara sat by the window, watching the rain trace lines down the glass. The neighborhood barbecue was coming up, a Memorial Day event she'd attended every year. This time, it would be different. If Harry and Lisa were bold enough to slander her in public, she'd be bold enough to expose them there too. But not yet. Not without proof. She reached for her old Radio Shack voice recorder, tucked inside Eric's cigar box. It still worked, its red light flickering like a heartbeat. 4 days, she followed them quietly, camera ready, recorder armed. At the grocery store, Harry guided her by the elbow, saying loudly, "She gets confused sometimes." At church, Lisa whispered to a friend, "Poor Clara, she's slipping fast." Every word was captured. Every lie immortalized. The day Harry called her broken, she didn't flinch. She only smiled. "You're right," she said softly. "Broken things can still cut." The recorder clicked off. Clara opened the folder Jimmy had given her, proof of her mental fitness from Dr. Hayes. "Fully functional," it read. "No cognitive decline." Perfect. By Friday, Clara had 47 minutes of damning evidence. The pieces were falling into place. When she walked into the kitchen that evening, Harry and Lisa were already there, their voices sharp. "You're getting worse," Harry said, his tone dripping with false concern. Lisa held her phone up, recording. "Mom, just sign the guardianship papers. It's for your safety." Clara's hands trembled slightly, but not from fear. From restraint. "Safety," she repeated. "Is that what you call theft these days?" Lisa's lips curled. "You're paranoid. This is exactly why you need supervision." Clara smiled faintly, pressing the record button in her pocket. "Supervision? That's one word for it." They argued for 10 minutes, about her condition, about the car, about shared family resources. When Clara finally nodded and said, "I'll think about it," they relaxed, convinced they'd won. But that night, when they slept, she copied every document, scanned every receipt, and stored them in Eric's old lockbox, the one he'd given her on their 40th anniversary. Inside it lay the weapons she needed: pension statements, VA evaluations, legal proof, and the truth. When dawn broke, she called Jimmy. "It's time," she said simply. "Then let's make it loud," he replied. Clara looked out the window at the flag waving gently on the porch. Her husband's old Marine banner fluttered beside it. For the first time since Eric's death, she felt alive again, not as a widow, not as a victim, but as a soldier ready for her next battle. The silence had ended. The war for justice had begun. Imagine being filmed, humiliated, and called broken by your own children, all while they secretly drain your life savings. But what if the woman they mocked had been trained to fight wars most people couldn't imagine? Clara's next move wasn't surrender. It was strategy. If you're feeling Clara's fire, hit subscribe, give this a like, and tell us where you're streaming from. The battle for truth is heating up. Don't miss what comes next. Chapter 3. The Forged Truth. The morning after the confrontation, Clara stood in front of her bathroom mirror, studying the reflection that stared back. The woman she saw didn't look broken. Her silver hair framed a face of quiet strength, her blue eyes clear and sharp. She traced the faint scar above her brow, a reminder from her second tour in Vietnam, and whispered to herself, "You've fought worse enemies than this." By 9 a.m., Jimmy was waiting outside in his truck, his VFW cap pulled low. "Got your papers?" he asked as she climbed in. Clara nodded, clutching the lockbox on her lap. Every lie they told, every dollar they took. They drove in silence toward the VFW post on Ramsey Street. The smell of coffee and old uniforms filled the air as veterans greeted her warmly. "Good to see you, Clara," one said. "Heard you've been keeping busy." Jimmy led her into a side office stacked with dusty law books and medals. On the desk sat a thick folder labeled Guardianship Filing, Anderson, Clara. "Here it is," Jimmy said, flipping it open. "Filed 2 weeks ago by your son. Claims you're no longer competent to manage your affairs." Clara leaned forward, her pulse quickening. The signature at the bottom was hers, or at least it looked that way. But she had never seen those papers before. "Forgery," Jimmy said firmly. "They pulled your old signature from your insurance forms and traced it. See this line here? Pressure inconsistency. Amateurs." Clara stared at it, her mind spinning. They really thought they could erase me on paper. Jimmy smiled. They forgot Marines read between the lines. Over the next hour, Jimmy laid out a plan. "We'll record, document, and confront. But we won't do it in private," he said. "People believe what they see. So, we'll make them see the truth." He explained the steps. First, gather hard proof. Second, expose the forgery to witnesses. And finally, confront them when their pride was highest, when the neighborhood trusted them most. That opportunity came faster than expected. Lisa had been bragging to the Johnsons next door about the upcoming Memorial Day barbecue. "Harry's organizing it this year," she'd said, voice full of false sweetness. "Poor Mom's too fragile to help." Clara's lips curled into a tight smile. "Perfect stage," she murmured. The next few days were a blur of quiet preparation. Clara spent hours printing statements, marking deposits and withdrawals, highlighting every transfer made without authorization. She even found the BMW payments disguised under home maintenance. "Clever," she said aloud. "Just not clever enough." She set up 2 hidden cameras, one in the kitchen vent, one in the living room clock, and synced them to her tablet. Every word, every sneer, every whispered plan between Harry and Lisa was captured in crisp clarity. One evening, she caught Harry saying, "Once Mom signs the revised POA, the house is ours. She won't even know." Lisa laughed. "By the time she figures it out, she'll be in that nursing home. And we'll have a pool." Clara's hands trembled as she watched, but her eyes stayed dry. "They think I'm weak," she said softly. "Let's show them what weak can do." By Friday, she met Jimmy again at the post. He flipped through the printed transcripts, nodding slowly. "This is bulletproof," he said. "You sure you want to go public?" "Yes," Clara replied. "They humiliated me in my own home. Let's see how they handle an audience." He leaned back, grinning. "Then we'll make Saturday a day Fayetteville won't forget." That night, Clara walked through the house, memories pressing in from every corner. Eric's photo smiled down from the mantel, medals gleaming beside it. She paused and whispered, "Wish you could see this, love. You'd be proud." The lights flickered softly as she packed her folder. In the background, a car alarm wailed faintly down the street, a sound that once made her flinch. This time, she didn't even blink. The storm she'd endured for 3 years was ending. Tomorrow, It was their turn to face the noise. They forged her name, stole her money, and thought they buried her spirit. But Clara wasn't dying quietly. Her next move wasn't about justice, it was about exposure. If you're still with Clara on this journey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell us where you're streaming from. The barbecue is coming, and so is the reckoning. Chapter 4: The Barbecue Betrayal. Saturday arrived bright and cloudless, the air humming with anticipation. The smell of grilled ribs and corn on the cob drifted through the neighborhood. Clara could hear laughter and country music from her porch as she pinned her medals onto her dress blues. Across the street, Harry was setting up folding tables, smiling like a local hero. Lisa fluttered nearby, her sundress spotless, her laughter practiced. To the neighbors, they were the perfect family. Clara watched from her window, recorder hidden beneath her blouse. "Showtime," she whispered. By noon, nearly 20 families had gathered. The Johnsons, the Rodriguezes, the Greens, all chatting, all unsuspecting. Clara waited until Harry approached her with his usual grin. "Mom, glad you made it. Feeling okay today?" "I'm fine," she said calmly, stepping into the sunlight. "Beautiful day for a party." Lisa joined in, her smile sharp. "She gets tired easily, but we make sure she's comfortable. Poor thing's been struggling, bless her heart." Clara felt a surge of heat under her skin but smiled sweetly. "You're such a thoughtful daughter-in-law, Lisa." The crowd laughed politely, unaware of the current running beneath the surface. As the afternoon wore on, Harry's charade intensified. He exaggerated her movements, guided her by the elbow, and told anyone who would listen, "Mom gets confused sometimes. Forgot her meds again today." Tony Rodriguez, the staff sergeant neighbor, frowned. "Really? She seems fine to me." Harry chuckled. "You know how it goes, Tony. Age catches up fast." Lisa nodded sympathetically. She threw a plate through the window last week, thought someone was breaking in. Lies rolled effortlessly off their tongues. But what they didn't know was that Clara's recorder, still humming quietly, caught every word. She waited until evening when the speeches began. Harry stood near the grill, beer in hand, thanking everyone for coming. "Family means everything," he said, his eyes sweeping the crowd. "Especially when we take care of our elders." Clara stepped forward. "May I say something?" Harry froze. Sure, Mom." She walked to the center, steady and calm, her medals glinting in the orange light. "You're right, Harry. Family does mean everything." The crowd turned to listen. Even the children went quiet. "For 3 years, I've been told I'm losing my mind," she began. "That I'm fragile, paranoid, broken." Her voice didn't waver. "But I've spent those same 3 years documenting the truth." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Harry laughed nervously. "Mom." Clara raised a hand. "No, son. It's my turn." She reached into her pocket and held up the recorder. 4 months, these two have stolen from me, over $47,000. They forged my signature, plotted to take my house, and planned to lock me in a nursing home." Gasps erupted. Lisa's face drained of color. "That's ridiculous." Clara pressed play. Harry's voice filled the air. "Once she's in the nursing home, the house pays off the credit cards." The crowd went dead silent. Tony stepped forward. "You said that, Harry." Harry stammered. "That's out of context." Jimmy, standing near the back, stepped forward holding a folder. "Context? Here's your forgery." He handed it to Tony, who read aloud the false deed and signature. Murmurs turned into outrage. Lisa began crying. "It wasn't like that." But Clara didn't stop. She pulled out a second document, her medical report from Dr. Hayes. Fully functional. Mentally sound. She looked Harry dead in the eyes. "So tell me again who's confused." No one spoke. The air crackled with disbelief. Harry's smile had vanished, replaced by a mask of panic. "You don't understand, Mom." "I understand perfectly," Clara said. "You underestimated a Marine." The crowd erupted in whispers, then applause. Cameras flashed. Phones recorded. Jimmy stepped forward, handing Harry an envelope. "Restraining order," he said firmly. "Filed this morning." You're barred from the property and accounts effective immediately. Clara turned to the crowd. Thank you all for coming. The barbecue's over. She walked away to thunderous applause, the recorder still playing softly in her hand. The crowd was silent, the truth undeniable. But Clara's war wasn't over yet. The next battle would be fought in court, and the enemy was her own blood. If you felt that moment, hit like, subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. The fallout begins next, don't miss it. Chapter 5, Fallout and Fire. The next morning, Fayetteville woke up to headlines. Vietnam veteran exposes family fraud at Memorial Day barbecue. Clara's phone buzzed non-stop. Journalists, old friends, veterans, all reaching out. Her story had gone viral overnight. Jimmy arrived early, newspaper in hand. You made the front page, he said, dropping it on her kitchen table. Clara adjusted her glasses, reading the bold letters. Disgusting. Marines don't abandon Marines. Not bad for a Sunday, she said softly. By noon, the sheriff's cruiser was parked outside. Officers entered politely, serving official documents to Harry and Lisa, who had come to talk. The restraining order held firm. They left in humiliation as neighbors peered from porches. Across the street, Tony Rodriguez shook his head. They messed with the wrong Marine. Inside, Clara sat quietly with a cup of tea. For the first time in years, she felt peace settling over her home. The walls no longer whispered betrayal, they echoed resilience. But her mission wasn't done. Jimmy reminded her, restitution, charges, public record. We finish what we started. Over the next week, Wells Fargo reversed $47,000 in unauthorized charges. The FBI flagged multiple suspicious transfers. Harry's insurance license was suspended pending investigation. Lisa's Nordstrom account was frozen. Their BMW, 3 payments behind, was repossessed. The Observer followed up. Elder abuse charges filed. Forgery confirmed. Community rallies for justice. While Harry and Lisa retreated to Lisa's mother's small apartment, Clara's world grew brighter. The VFW Post created the Clara Anderson Elder Advocacy Fund, helping 12 veterans within 3 months. Donations poured in nationwide. On Friday, the district attorney called. Mrs. Anderson, we've got enough for prosecution, elder abuse, fraud, and forgery. But they're offering a plea deal, restitution and probation. Clara took a deep breath. Let them live with shame. That's a longer sentence. When the plea was finalized, she stood before the judge, medals gleaming. Harry avoided her eyes. Lisa sobbed quietly. Do you have anything to say, Mrs. Anderson? The judge asked. Clara's voice was calm. Just that forgiveness is earned, not demanded. When it was over, Jimmy hugged her. You did it, Clara. You won. She smiled faintly. No, Jimmy. We won, for everyone they tried to silence. That evening, she sat on the porch, watching Tony's kids ride their bikes. Grandma Clara, they called. She laughed, waving back. Her home felt alive again, Eric's furniture restored, her medals framed proudly above the fireplace. Dr. Hayes called later that week. How's the anxiety? She asked. Clara chuckled. Better. Gaslighting's worse than combat, but I'm healing. Her voice softened. You know what the best part is, Doc? I finally sleep through the night. 3 months later, she received a message from Harry. I'm sorry. Can we talk? She stared at it for a long time, then typed. You forgot. I'm a Marine. We don't surrender. Then she deleted his number. That night, Tony and his wife invited her over for dinner. Mary Patterson, a Navy widow, sat across the table, smiling warmly. Their eyes met, and for the first time in years, Clara felt a flicker of something she thought she'd lost, companionship. As laughter filled the room, she whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude. Her fight had restored more than justice, it had restored her dignity. The next morning, she hung a new plaque by her front door. Strength is quiet until tested. And in the soft morning light, she saluted the flag one more time, this time not as a victim, but as a survivor who refused to surrender her soul. They stole her money, mocked her pain, and tried to erase her name. But Clara's fight lit a fire that burned far beyond her home. What happens when justice inspires others? That's where our next story begins. If Clara's strength moved you, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and tell us where you're streaming from. Justice is louder when we share it, and Clara's voice deserves to be heard. Chapter 6: The Calm After the Storm. The first morning after the court ruling was unusually quiet. Clara Anderson woke to the gentle hum of birds outside her window and the golden light spilling across her quilt. For the first time in years, she didn't feel the weight of fear pressing on her chest. She made coffee the way she used to before everything fell apart, strong, black, and poured into her chipped Marine Corps mug. As she sat by the window, she watched the neighborhood children waiting for their school bus, laughing freely. She smiled. Life, it seemed, was still moving forward. Jimmy stopped by mid-morning, holding a bag of powdered donuts. "Peace and pastries," he said with a grin. Clara laughed. "You're terrible for my diet." He shrugged. "After what you've been through, you've earned every carb." They sat together on her porch swing. Jimmy read from the newspaper, the latest headline. "Veteran story inspires new push for elder protection laws." "Looks like your little barbecue stirred up something bigger," Jimmy said proudly. 3 council members are talking about forming a committee on elder abuse prevention. Clara raised an eyebrow. "Good. Maybe my pain can build something useful." But peace didn't come all at once. At night, the silence was still too loud. Sometimes, she'd wake at 3 a.m., the echoes of gaslighting replaying in her head, Harry's lies, Lisa's sneers, the doubt that had almost swallowed her whole. Dr. Hayes told her it was normal. "Trauma doesn't vanish with justice," she said during their next session. "You have to reteach yourself what safety feels like." So Clara started small. She began volunteering at the VFW 3 days a week. She cleaned tables, arranged flags, and talked to other veterans about their own battles. Some fought overseas, others fought within their own homes. One afternoon, she met a woman named Janet, an 81-year-old widow who whispered that her daughter had taken over her bank accounts. Clara's heart clenched. "They told me it was for my own good," Janet said. Clara placed a firm hand on hers. "That's what they told me too. But we're not powerless." That night, Clara opened a notebook and wrote, "The Elder Justice Project, a voice for the silenced." It wasn't revenge anymore. It was purpose. The storm had passed, but Clara wasn't done. From the ashes of betrayal, a new mission was being born, and it would shake more than just one family. If you believe in what Clara stands for, hit like, subscribe, and comment justice below. The Elder Justice Project is about to begin. Chapter 7: Voices of the Forgotten. By September, the small meeting room at the VFW post buzzed every Thursday evening. Word had spread, Clara Anderson, the Marine who exposed her son's fraud, was helping others reclaim their voices. The first meeting drew 5 people. By the 4th, there were 22. Veterans, widows, and retirees, each with their own scars. Clara stood at the front, her posture still proud, her voice steady. "They count on our silence," she told them. "But silence is surrender, and Marines don't surrender." A round of applause followed. Janet wiped her tears quietly. They shared stories that mirrored Clara's own: children who drained accounts, caretakers who manipulated trust, relatives who hid behind legal jargon. Jimmy recorded testimonies with permission, compiling evidence for a report to the state attorney. "We're gonna make noise," he said. "Real noise." Soon, a local journalist named Kelly Rains contacted Clara. "Mrs. Anderson," she said, "I'd like to feature your group in a documentary on elder exploitation." Clara hesitated. "We're not looking for fame." Kelly smiled. "Maybe not. But your story can change laws." The filming began a week later. Cameras captured the veterans' faces, the pain, the resilience, the courage to speak. Clara became the quiet anchor of their narrative. One scene stood out. Janet, trembling, read aloud her statement. "My daughter told me I was losing my mind. I believed her. Until Clara reminded me that I wasn't crazy, I was being controlled." The camera panned to Clara, who simply nodded. Truth has a way of finding its way home. When the documentary aired, it sparked national attention. Donations flooded in. The Elder Justice Project moved from a small room at the VFW to a rented office downtown. Letters arrived daily. One from Texas read, "Your story gave me the strength to take my case to court." Another from Florida said, "I'm not ashamed anymore." Clara read each one carefully, tears often blurring her vision. Jimmy teased her gently. "You're becoming a hero." She smiled faintly. "Heroes don't wear capes, Jimmy. They survive hell and still show up for others." The world had heard Clara's voice, but with attention came new enemies. Not everyone wanted the truth to spread. If Clara's courage moved you, click like and share this video. In the next chapter, the pushback begins, and not everyone will stand with her. Chapter 8: The Backlash. With fame came friction. Not everyone celebrated Clara's growing influence. Within months, whispers started to circulate, that she was exploiting her story, that she exaggerated details for sympathy. Anonymous letters appeared in her mailbox. "You're embarrassing your family." Another read, "You've had your justice, sit down." Jimmy was furious. "Cowards," he spat, hiding behind letters. But Clara wasn't shaken. "If they're writing, it means they're afraid of what we're building." Still, the pressure intensified. A state senator with ties to senior care lobbyists called her a media creation. Online trolls twisted her story. Harry's lawyer hinted at defamation claims. Kelly, the journalist, warned her. "The louder your voice, the more they'll try to silence you." Clara smiled grimly. "Then I'll speak louder." She began organizing public seminars, free sessions teaching seniors how to protect assets, identify financial abuse, and seek help. Local churches and community centers filled up fast. During one event, an elderly man named Robert approached her afterward. He said, voice trembling, "My son's been taking my pension. I thought it was normal." Clara gripped his hand firmly. "You're not alone. We'll help you." But the backlash hit harder at home. Late one night, she caught sight of a familiar car parked down the block, Harry's old sedan. Her breath caught. Jimmy urged her to report it. The sheriff investigated but found nothing. Still, the feeling lingered, like a ghost that refused to leave. The next week, Clara returned home to find her mailbox ripped open and her flag torn down. She stood silently, staring at the shredded cloth. She didn't cry. She just picked it up, folded it neatly, and whispered, "They'll never break me." Then she called Tony Rodriguez. "I need a new flagpole," she said. "Something taller this time." By sunset, a new flag waved proudly over her home, stronger, brighter, higher than before. The threats were growing, and the past was circling back. Clara's next fight wouldn't be in court, it would be for her own safety. If you stand with Clara, hit like and comment "Stand strong." The storm is returning, and she's ready for it. Chapter 9: The Return of Harry. It was a grey morning when the knock came. Clara opened the door to find Harry standing on her porch. He looked smaller, thinner, the arrogance gone from his face. "Mom," he said softly, "I just want to talk." Clara hesitated. "You forfeited that right." "I know," he said, eyes downcast. "But I need to explain." Jimmy, who was painting her fence nearby, stepped closer. "You sure about this, Clara?" She nodded slowly. "Let him speak." Inside, Harry sat on the edge of the couch where he once laughed with his father. "I lost everything," he admitted. "My license, my job, my marriage. Lisa's gone. I just wanted closure." Clara watched him quietly. "Closure?" He nodded. "I wasn't thinking straight back then. I thought you'd outlive your savings, and I panicked. I didn't mean for it to go that far." Her eyes hardened. "You forged my name, Harry. You tried to have me declared incompetent." He swallowed. "I know. And I'm sorry." The silence stretched long. Finally, Clara said, "You didn't just steal my money. You stole my peace. And that's something you can't repay." Tears filled his eyes. "Can I at least try?" Clara rose, her posture strong. "Redemption isn't words, Harry, it's action. You'll know what to do when you're ready." He nodded slowly, then left. When the door closed, Jimmy asked, "You okay?" Clara sighed. "Forgiveness isn't weakness. It's just, not my priority yet." That night, she opened her journal and wrote, "The hardest battles are fought with open hands, not closed fists." She wasn't sure if she'd ever trust Harry again, but she realized she no longer needed to. Her strength no longer depended on his remorse. Forgiveness doesn't erase betrayal, but sometimes it opens a door to healing. For Clara, that door was about to lead somewhere unexpected. If you believe in second chances, hit subscribe. In the next chapter, Clara finds new purpose and a reason to keep living beyond the pain. Chapter 10. The Legacy Begins. A year later, the Elder Justice Project had grown into a statewide movement. Clara, now 73, was invited to speak at the North Carolina Capitol. She stood at the podium in her Navy dress uniform, medals polished, voice firm. Every elder deserves dignity. Every veteran deserves protection. And every abuser, no matter their title or bloodline, deserves justice. The chamber erupted in applause. Lawmakers nodded. Cameras flashed. The Clara Anderson Act, a bill enforcing stricter penalties for financial abuse of elders, passed unanimously that same year. After the ceremony, Kelly approached her. "You've changed lives, Clara." Clara smiled. "No. They changed mine. I just showed them it was possible." At home, the VFW Post unveiled a new plaque. "In honor of Clara Anderson, for turning betrayal into strength." Jimmy gave a small salute. "You did good, Marine." She laughed. "I just followed orders, from my heart." That night, Clara sat on her porch, the flag waving above her. The sunset painted the sky in gold and crimson, colors of both battle and peace. Her phone buzzed with another message, this time from Janet. "You saved me, Clara." "Thank you." She smiled and whispered, "We saved each other." In the quiet of that evening, Clara closed her eyes and breathed deeply. For the first time in decades, her life wasn't about survival, it was about legacy. And somewhere in that golden silence, she felt Eric beside her again, proud and at peace. Clara's fight ended in justice, but her story lives on. Because when one woman stands against betrayal, she gives courage to countless others. If Clara's journey touched your heart, like, subscribe, and share her story. Because every voice matters, and silence, as she proved, is never the end. Chapter 11. Shadows of the Past. Autumn had come to Fayetteville. The leaves blushed gold and red, swirling across the street as Clara Anderson raked her yard. Every motion was deliberate, steady, rhythmic, grounding. She had built a new rhythm in life: morning walks, volunteer work, weekly therapy, and Sunday dinners with Tony Rodriguez's family. The Elder Justice Project had grown beyond her wildest dreams, but some nights the ghosts still whispered. It happened one evening while she was organizing old photographs. She found one of Harry at his 10th birthday, grinning ear to ear, frosting on his nose, Eric lifting him up proudly. Her heart twisted. So much love. So much loss. Her phone buzzed, a voicemail from an unknown number. She pressed play. "Mom, it's me." Harry's voice cracked. "I'm sober now. Working again. I just wanted to say, thank you. For not giving up on me completely." Clara sat in silence. Her throat tightened, but she didn't delete it. Not yet. The next day, she spoke about it during therapy. Dr. Hayes leaned forward gently. "Forgiveness doesn't mean reopening the door. It just means you're not letting him live rent-free in your heart anymore." Clara smiled faintly. He's paid enough rent already. But fate had one more twist. 2 weeks later, during a veterans luncheon, a woman approached her. "Mrs. Anderson? I'm Detective Laura Chen from the State Attorney's Office." Clara frowned slightly. "Is something wrong?" The detective hesitated. "Your son Harry, he's been helping with elder abuse investigations. He mentioned your story inspired him." For a moment, Clara couldn't breathe. "He what?" "He's been working with our financial crimes unit for the past 6 months, Chen said. Apparently, he turned his life around." Clara's hands trembled slightly, but her voice remained calm. "Then maybe the Marines taught me one thing right: people can still change under pressure." That night, she replayed his voicemail again. This time, she didn't cry. She whispered, "Semper Fi, Harry. Do better than I did." The past had haunted Clara for years, but now, it was asking for peace. Could she forgive the man who almost destroyed her? If you believe redemption is real, drop a red heart hash in the comments, hit like, and tell us where you're watching from. The story isn't over yet. Clara's final mission is about to begin. Chapter 12, A New Mission. In January, Clara sat in the conference room of the Fayetteville City Hall. The Elder Justice Project had secured its first government grant, $500,000 to expand across the state. Reporters snapped photos. News outlets called it a victory for the voiceless. But Clara didn't care about headlines. What mattered was the hotline number printed on every flyer, 1-800 Elder Aid. Each call meant someone brave enough to speak up. That week, Clara mentored a young Marine named Travis, recently discharged after a roadside injury. He struggled with PTSD and a strained relationship with his parents. Sometimes, he confessed, I feel like I don't belong anywhere anymore. Clara looked him squarely in the eye. You belong wherever you decide to keep fighting, Marine. She gave him a small medal Eric once wore, a tarnished bronze star. When you think you've lost everything, remember this: survival is its own kind of victory. Word of Clara's mentorship spread quickly. By spring, the project had chapters in 3 states. Universities invited her to speak. She stood before crowds of students, telling them the truth. It's not the war that breaks you, it's forgetting who you fought to become. After one speech, a young woman approached her, trembling. Mrs. Anderson. I used to record my grandma's panic attacks for proof she was unwell. I thought I was helping her. I didn't realize I was hurting her. Clara placed a hand on her shoulder. You realized it now. That's what matters. At night, back home, Clara felt Eric's presence again in the stillness. Sometimes, she'd whisper, we did it, love. We made the world a little safer. And somewhere deep inside, the Marine who once fought in the jungles of Vietnam realized she had finally come home. Clara's new mission gave hope to others, but fate had one last challenge waiting, one that would test her strength like never before. If you're proud of Clara's fight, hit subscribe, like this video, and comment honor. The final test of her courage is coming next. Chapter 13, The Test of Time. By late summer, Clara began feeling unusually tired. Small things, climbing stairs, carrying groceries, left her winded. Jimmy urged her to see Dr. Hayes, who ordered tests. A week later, the diagnosis came, early-stage congestive heart failure. Clara took the news with quiet acceptance. Guess the old engine's sputtering, she joked. But Jimmy wasn't amused. You've given everything to others, Clara. It's time to let us take care of you. She smiled softly. I'm not done yet. Instead of slowing down, she doubled her efforts. She worked from home, recorded messages for volunteers, and began writing a memoir, Letters from the Battlefield, a veteran's guide to surviving betrayal. Her opening line read, I survived Vietnam, marriage, loss, and family betrayal, but the hardest battle was forgiving myself for trusting too much. The memoir became her therapy. Each page carried both pain and peace. Harry visited one afternoon, unannounced. He looked stronger, healthier. I heard about your diagnosis, he said softly. Can I help? Clara studied him for a long moment. You can make coffee. Black, 2 sugars. They talked for hours, about Eric, the house, the past. And for the first time, Clara didn't feel anger, only a tired sort of calm. Before leaving, Harry handed her a folded paper. It was a donation receipt, $10,000 to the Elder Justice Project. For Dad, he said. When he left, Clara wiped a single tear. Maybe people really do change, she whispered. She returned to her desk, pen poised, finishing the last chapter of her memoir. The battlefield isn't a place, it's the people you love enough to fight for. Hook. As Clara's health faded, her legacy grew brighter. But her story wasn't finished, not until she passed the torch to the next generation. Outro. If Clara's strength inspires you, drop a flexed biceps in the comments. The final chapters of her life will remind you why heroes never fade. Chapter 14, Passing the Torch. Winter returned quietly, wrapping Fayetteville in still air and frost. Clara's heart condition had worsened, but her spirit never dimmed. The Elder Justice Project now had offices in 5 states. Travis, the young Marine she'd mentored, was its new director. He visited often, always calling her even when she teased him to stop. One snowy morning, he brought her the first printed copy of her memoir. We're releasing it on Veterans Day, he said proudly. Clara smiled faintly. Just promise me it helps someone. It already has, he said. You helped me. Later that week, the mayor called. Fayetteville was naming a new community center after her, the Clara Anderson House of Honor. When the ribbon-cutting day arrived, Clara insisted on attending despite her frailty. Jimmy pushed her wheelchair to the stage. Reporters gathered, cameras flashing. She spoke softly, voice thin but unwavering. I once thought betrayal was the end of everything. But sometimes, it's the beginning of purpose. If you've been broken, stand tall. Because the cracks let the light through. The crowd rose to its feet, applauding. That night, as snowflakes tapped against her window, Clara sat by the fireplace, surrounded by photos, Eric, the VFW, her team, her son, her medals. She whispered, "Mission accomplished." And for the first time, she felt complete. Clara's body was fading, but her spirit was immortal. The final chapter of her story wasn't about death, it was about what remains after. If Clara's journey moved you, hit like, share, and subscribe. The finale, the moment her legacy becomes eternal, comes next. Chapter 15, The Final Salute. 900 words. Spring sunlight streamed through the hospital window. Clara Anderson lay quietly, her hand resting over a folded flag placed gently on her chest. Jimmy, Travis, and Tony stood nearby, their faces solemn but peaceful. Dr. Hayes had said it was only a matter of time. Clara had accepted it. I've fought enough battles, she told them with a smile. It's time to stand down. Her last days were filled with visits, neighbors, veterans, even Harry. He sat beside her bed, holding her hand. I don't deserve your forgiveness, he said softly. Clara whispered, you already earned it when you decided to be better. That's all any of us can do. She closed her eyes, drifting between dreams and memories, the smell of rain in Vietnam, Eric's laughter, Tony's kids calling her Grandma Clara. On her final morning, she whispered to Jimmy, tell them, never surrender. And then, quietly, she was gone. The funeral was held at the Fayetteville National Cemetery. Hundreds attended, veterans, officials, neighbors, and strangers who'd been touched by her story. As the bugler played taps, Tony's daughter placed a small bronze star on her coffin. For Grandma Clara, she said. The crowd saluted. Flags waved. Tears fell freely. Weeks later, a new sign appeared outside the Elder Justice Project office. Clara Anderson Foundation, fighting for dignity, honor, and truth. Travis led the first annual Anderson March, raising awareness for elder abuse. Participants wore shirts that read, Never Surrender. And somewhere, beyond the sound of the marching boots, beyond the flags and applause, Clara Anderson smiled. Because she had won. They thought they broke her. Instead, she became a legend. Clara Anderson's story isn't just about revenge, it's about reclaiming dignity and rewriting what it means to be strong. If you are inspired by Clara Anderson's journey, hit like, share this story, and tell us where you're streaming from. Remember, betrayal may start a war, but resilience always wins it. Until next time, stay strong, stay brave, and never surrender.